Mayor Pro Tem Wesley Hudson. I'd like to call us to order this evening. We should have one more joining us.
Was that a phone or is it?
I'm not sure what that is. I was going to ask. Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Thank you. As I said, it's Wesley Hudson, President and Council tonight. For those online, Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Johnson, Councilmember Holmes, Councilmember Jones, and Jefferson. We have a quorum, and we will begin. I'd like to ask everyone here to rise for a moment of silence, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. Pledge allegiance. Our first item tonight is a proclamation. This is National Library Week, and I see Dorothea and Mary are here tonight. Let me read the part of the proclamation, and I can invite you all to come up and exchange. Whereas libraries provide the opportunity for everyone to pursue their passions and engage in lifelong learning, allowing each other to live their best life, and whereas libraries adapt to the ever-changing needs of their communities, continually expanding their collections, services, and partnerships, and whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve and ensure equity of access for all. And whereas libraries play a critical role in the economic vitality of communities by providing internet and technology access, literacy skills, and support for job seekers, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all, and libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, J.W. Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, proclaim National Library Week, April 23rd through 29th, 2023, and encourage all residents to visit their library to explore the wealth of resources available. And Mary, if you all would like to come up and say a word. Or stay silent. Either is good.
You gotta go take
I gotta go
a
take a
picture.
picture, don't I? Thank you both, and I'll encourage everyone to visit the library. It's an incredible library, a phenomenal resource for the city. Our second item tonight is a report from our Finance Committee, and I will call on Councilmember Holmes to handle that for us.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hudson. Our Finance Committee did meet April 13th, and we have several items in consent agenda, and I will make a favorable recommendation for approval of consent agenda.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Approval? Any denied? That motion passes unanimously.
Mayor Pro Tem, we also have one item in a public hearing set for public hearing tonight, item 2023-174, performance-based incentives, Vico Plan LLC, and at this point, I will open public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? Sandy Dunbeck.
Yes, good evening. We have a presentation tonight. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you. Members of council and manager. I am Sandy Dunbeck, Director of High Point Economic Development, and I, along with my colleague Sarah Stevenson, are pleased to bring you this proposed industrial project for High Point. The company is Veco Plan, which operates under Veco Plan LLC and Veco Plan Holding Company. They manufacture industrial grinding equipment for the woods, plastics, paper, and waste industries. And with us here tonight in council chambers is Jeff Queen, Chief Financial Officer for Veco Plan, who will share additional information shortly. So in order to establish this U.S. headquarters location, Veco Plan is considering High Point along with other locations across the U.S., including Virginia, South Carolina, Indiana, and California. The level of skilled labor and professional employees are exactly the types of jobs we would like to have here in High Point. Should the project move forward in High Point, the company would lease the entire building at 501 Gallimore Dairy Road, which is shell space, which is 94,160 square feet for a 10-year period with 2 options to renew each of those periods of 5 years. The company could potentially relocate 90 positions and will create 51 new positions with an average annual compensation package of $85,490. For the project, the EDC is recommending the consideration of up to $155,366 in cash grant incentives under the Industrial Incentives Policy to encourage the company's location in High Point. The source of that funding would be the city's Economic Development Incentive Fund, which is funded by general and electric revenues. So again, we ask you to consider authorizing $155,366 in performance-based incentives, and also to authorize the city manager to execute a performance agreement with the company containing investment and employment benchmarks for the company to achieve, along with a schedule for the payment of such financial incentives. We would hope that the company would make its decision on whether to choose High Point as its location within the next 60 days. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Mr. Jeff Queen of the company to share a little bit more with us tonight. And you can just tap.
This
For
one
you,
or
either
this?
one. I just used this one. I like it better.
Okay, fantastic. Mayor Pro Tem, managers, council, thanks for hearing our situation and our story. I'm Jeff Queen, as Sandy nicely introduced me. I have a role as the North American Controller for Veco Plan Holding and as the CFO and Managing Director of Veco Plan LLC, which is the operating entity for North America, for our German-owned North American operation. Where are we? Here we go. Okay, so what we do is we manufacture and distribute industrial grinding equipment. We service plastic industry, wood, paper, and the waste industry. Our customers tend to have the issue of how to handle their waste, how to size reduce it, and how to dispose of it, or in most cases, recycle it. Our grinding systems, our shred trucks, and our advanced industrial shredding equipment have made us truly the global leader in the conversion, recycling, scrap, and repurposing markets. You will see here that we have 8 locations throughout the world, mostly in Europe and the U.S. Our main headquarters is in Bad Marienburg, Germany. We're in England, Austria, Spain. Currently, the LLC is in Randolph County. We have a Veco Plan West in Eastvale, California. We're in Poland and Switzerland. This chart here gives you a timeline of the development of VecoPlan as a group. We were founded in 1969. In 1995, Max Automation, which is a holding company, became the major shareholder of VecoPlan. In 2000, we formed VecoPlan Holding and VecoPlan LLC. In 2007, we founded England, 2011, Austria, 2012, Spain, 2018, Poland. In 2022, we opened a facility in Eastvale, California. And 2023, which has not happened yet, we look to invest in the LLC as the operating entity and the North American headquarters. Our main business units are in three areas: the wood biomass, the recycling waste, and the service and parts. In the wood biomass industry, we split that with two subsegments: the primary wood industry, the secondary wood industry. In the primary wood industry, we sell equipment to sawmills, timber, pulp type industries. We refer to it as green wood. In the secondary industry, we deal with a lot of woodworking manufacturers, cabinetry, furniture plants, and their waste. For energy, where we deal with wood biomass power plants, wood pellet producers, and bioethanol producers. And again, I want to emphasize that this is not an all-day presentation, so these are segments that we've put together for this presentation. In the recycling waste, we deal with mechanical recycling, which is your typical recycling plant or facility, plastic processing companies. Our waste recovery, we deal in RDF, refuge-derived fuel, and waste-to-energy plants. We also deal with data destruction, which is government and public secure documents typically, and data management service facilities. Our service, we provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, reliable service techs for our customer. We provide training, maintenance, retrofits, and live on-site service. Our parts department, we provide wear parts, spare parts for inventory, aftermarket parts, and we handle our manufacturer's warranty, and we also have a web shop. Some of our product lines include chipper lines, conveyance technology, loading and unloading systems, storage and dosing systems, screening and separation technology, grinding technology, and storage technology. So our 2023 expansion intentions, we currently show a growth trajectory of a 50% revenue increase by 2030. The growth directly correlates to the increased machine demand, trucks, mobile and collection production capacity is necessary, auxiliary equipment production capacity, and we need the human capital to meet the demand. Our highlights are we need a building expansion clearly to accomplish these goals. There's an increased demand and a need for production locally of auxiliary equipment, an increased demand for machine retrofits in the building expansion. We need to double the production of our mobile truck division, and a mobile shred truck is what I'm talking about. We have just introduced, and we need to start producing a collection truck. And obviously, we need to increase the personnel, skilled labor, as well as inside support staff. Our goal is to move the facility to a location that can satisfy the current demand, facilitate growth and production capacity for future demand, but also enables us to continue to draw from a deeply skilled workforce. VECO Plan also understands the power of providing positive and measurable change to the community we operate, work, and reside in. Better employee morale builds a positive work environment, which is why we offer company-wide and individual volunteer opportunities to each of our employees. I would like to close by thanking Mayor Pro Tem, the council, and the manager for considering the opportunity for VECO Plan to continue to grow in the area. And yes, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Queen. Any questions for Mr. Queen? Mr. Queen, I would just go to say that as someone who's worked in wood-based manufacturing now for the last decade, so glad that you are considering High Point. America is going through a manufacturing renaissance, and I'm glad you're considering High Point to be part of that. So if there are no other questions for Mr. Queen, I will close the public hearing and make a favorable recommendation for approval.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Anything further
No, that's it.
for you all?
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is P&L Committee, and I will be handling that myself. We met at our regular time, and you see there's a consent agenda in front of you, and I make a motion for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion of that?
Yes, so on the item 2023-176, I probably could use some more in-depth, but I have read about it. This is one of those that I can't support, and the reason is that I feel like that for that amount of money, we have the intelligence, the professionalism, the information, the history, and I think we can do that on our own. So for that reason, I will not be supporting it.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. The vote of 7-6-1, correct? Our next item will be planning and development, and I'll handle that as well. And I think I'm turning this over to Chris. Yes? No? No?
This is on the first,
This is the item 2023-169. If no presentation, I'm happy.
this is the historic preservation.
Historic preservation, correct. If no presentation, I'll make a motion to approve it, but
You certainly can.
I'll make a motion to approve item 2023-169.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Not all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. I would also like to make a motion to pull item 2023-084 out of pending.
Second.
There is a motion and second to pull 2023-084 out of pending. Any discussion on that? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is out of pending. And then I will make, this is for those in the audience, this is our proposal for the sign ordinance that has been in process for quite a while. We got an update from planning and zoning today that answered some questions that we had asked, and very, very good answer to those questions. So I will make a motion to approve 2023-084. I will need a second on that. There's a second on that. Any discussion on that? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. There are now some public hearing items. We'll start with the Woodhaven Development Group, which is zoning map amendment 23-02. Sorry. And I would like to open the public hearing on this item. I think Herb Shannon's going to give us our first.
Yes, excuse me. Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the City of High Point Planning and Development Department. And your first public hearing for zoning items is zoning case 23-02. This is a request by Woodhaven Development. They're requesting to rezone 5.7 acres from our retail center district to a conditional zoning general business district. This is the general location of the site as far as in view of the entire city. The site's located at the intersection of North Main Street and University Parkway. This is our land use plan. The area you see highlighted in red, our land use plan designated for commercial use. As you can see, this site's along the North Main Street corridor where our land use policy does support a wide range of commercial uses. That is a slide of the site in general. If you're familiar with this location, it used to be the old Buy Low Shopping Center. It was previously a Gold's Gym. It had a, retail center designation because it functioned as a multi-use shopping center type use. That's how it was developed, that 42,000 square foot building. The applicant's requesting rezoning as they're proposing to renovate that facility for a major automotive use to be a car dealership that would have sales and repair services. It would no longer be a multi-tenant facility, but a single-use facility. Thus, the staff is requesting rezoning. Key issues to note from the staff report: the site is located along a segment of the North Main Street corridor that has a combination of retail center and general business uses. So the requested GB district is not out of character with this area. As far as mitigation of impacts, there really was nothing to mitigate. When the site was developed in the 1990s, it included turn lanes that would mitigate traffic impact. And I will conclude by saying that the requested GB district is not out of character with this area, as this is an established commercial corridor within the northern portion of High Point. Thus, staff is recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal at their March public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 7-0. And it did forward to City Council a consistency and reasonableness statement for your consideration. That is a brief summary of the staff report. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? Yes, Mr. Terrell.
I'm hoping there's no one here to speak against. I'm Tom Terrell with the law firm Fox Rothschild, 529 West Parkway Avenue. This is a rezoning to accommodate a Tesla dealership. I think everybody knows that. It is a perfect location for Tesla. It is a perfect location for High Point. When we did our neighborhood outreach, I got 2 emails and 1 phone call, and they were all enthusiastic, make this happen. Planning and zoning was unanimous in its support. We ask you, of course, for that same unanimity. If you approve it tonight, they will be starting tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Terrell. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this?
Hey, question.
Yes.
Tom Terrell, if I could. Tom, a question for you. Do you know, I know outside of rezoning, that parking lot needs some work. It's a little bit dated. Do you know if they're planning on doing any updates to that?
I do not.
Okay.
I will speculate, and maybe that's dangerous, but there will be a limited portion of that parking lot where they have display vehicles. They're not like a typical dealership where you arrive and buy a car on the lot. You come, pick it out in order. So I would guess that they're going to make the parking lot look great, just like they're going to make the building look great.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Just a question. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, then I will close the public hearing, and I will make a motion to approve zoning map amendment 23-02 to include the consistency and reasonableness statement. There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
Just to you, Mayor Pro Tem, since that's 4, right? That's in your district. It's right there.
Yes.
Have you had any?
I have had 0 negatives multiple positive comments about this.
All I've heard is positive, but
We're
since.
very excited about this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Our next item is zoning map amendment 23-05.
Yes, this is a request submitted by Winfield Properties to rezone approximately 3.6 acres, 3 parcels located at the northwest corner of North University Parkway and Old Winston Road to support a multifamily development. These parcels are currently zoned residential single-family 5 or R5. The applicant's requesting rezoning to a conditional zoning residential multifamily 26 district. That will support up to 72 dwelling units. However, the applicant may not be proposing as to do the full 72 units. In conjunction with this request, they've submitted a conditional zoning ordinance in which they've offered conditions pertaining to landscaping, pedestrian access, and vehicle access to ensure compatibility with the surrounding area. Key points to note from the staff analysis. This is a copy of the land use plan. This is adjacent to the North Main Street corridor. As you can see, this corner is designated to support commercial uses. The applicant could have requested a commercial zoning, as several of our commercial zoning districts do permit multifamily uses. But since they weren't doing any type of mixed-use development, it's just going to be straight multifamily, they've elected just to submit for the residential multifamily 26 district. Key issues outlined in the staff report as far as compatibility. The zoning site is separated from the residential neighborhood to the east by the Old Winston Road right-of-way. That is a minor thoroughfare, and near that intersection, it is about 60 to 80 feet in width. As far as the budding residential to the north, the applicant has offered a condition that access from Old Winston Road would align with Oak Creek Road. There is an existing traffic signal there. They will be required to modify that, but that would ensure a controlled ingress and egress. And with that access drive along that northern boundary, along with higher landscaping standards, would provide separation from the budding single-family areas to the north. I would also note that the character of this area has changed over the years. With the completion of the intermediate loop, which is basically the Hartley Drive, North University Parkway extension from North Main Street to East Chester Drive in the late 1990s, and the widening of Old Winston Road from a 2-lane local street to 4 lanes with turn lanes. It is now a minor thoroughfare. The character of this area has changed. This is now a major intersection, and land use policy supports higher intensity uses. Thus, staff is recommending approval with the conditions offered by the applicant to support multifamily, and those conditions also will help ensure compatibility with the adjacent property owners. Included in your staff report is this illustrative plan. This is just the applicant's first draft of how they believe development may occur. This is not a binding site plan, so buildings may move around, but the access point is locked in so that it will help show separation from the adjacent single family. And it also notes that that wide right-of-way also helps provide separation from the property owners on the other side of Old Winston. If more than 50 dwelling units are developed, 2 points of access are proposed, and there are conditions that if there is a second access point, it will be from University Parkway, and turn lanes would be required. That is a brief summary of that staff report. Are there any questions of staff?
Just a confirmation. As said, if it stays 50 and under, the access is off of Old Winston?
Just one access point required, yes.
But if it goes beyond, there will be turn lanes required coming off of Hartley?
Yes.
Mayor,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem, just to confirm that you did open the public hearing.
I did not, but I will at this moment. I was going to, thank you.
I would note there was one letter in opposition from an elderly couple. They were not able to make the meeting tonight, so they requested staff provide you that letter just to address their concerns. They're on the opposite side of Old Winston at that intersection, and I believe their letter outlines their concerns just in general.
So have you given thought, and I'm sure you did, if they do end up accessing off of Hartley, quite a few people walk that sidewalk to get to Walmart and Food Lion and other places. So at that point, it's just be careful when you're crossing the street, like normal, I guess, right?
Yes, well, our ordinance would require, there are already sidewalks along Hartley,
Yeah.
and the sidewalks along Old Winston would have to be upgraded. Thinking about pedestrian access, there's also condition that they have connection from the internal to the adjacent sidewalks, because you do have quite a diverse and commercial use directly behind them that is certainly walkable.
Thanks.
Anything further from Mr. Shannon? Not. Thank you for the update. Is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? You would approach and state your name for the record.
Davis Ray, Winfield Properties, 5614 Riverdale Drive in Jamestown. Thank you all, council members, for being here tonight to hear our proposal. Staff laid it out pretty well of what we have proposed. One thing I will update is we are contemplating reducing the site size down to 60 units. So that would still trigger that second access point, but it would allow some more open space on the property to kind of move a building or two around. As you can see, it's pretty tight in there now. Again, I just wanted to thank you all and open myself up for questions. I don't have much to add outside of what Mr. Shannon had.
Any questions?
The consideration for the number of unit reduction, is that contingent on approval, or is that just something that you guys are considering?
It's something that we're contemplating to figure out. We're going to have 2 access points, whether we have 60 or 72. So we're in the process of designing that now to figure out what works best. Obviously, it's very, very tight, so it's going to take quite a bit of movement, and it may make sense to just reduce that down to 60 and
Right.
allow that enough space away from the intersection for the turn lane.
Yep.
And that second access point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I will make a motion to approve zoning map amendment 23-05 to include the consistency and reasonableness statement.
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I know we got this letter in our inboxes of opposition. Is that the only one that we've received as far as opposition on this?
Yes.
Okay.
This is also Ward 4. That's the only opposition call that I've gotten as
Well,
well.
it's
so.
commercial to like very similar designations, so I don't think it'll be highly opposed, but just want to make sure that's all we had. Okay, that's all the question I had.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Our next item is zoning map amendment 23-06, and again, Mr. Shannon, and I will open the public hearing.
Yes, zoning map amendment 2306 is also a request from Winfield Development. The applicant's requesting rezoning to support redevelopment of a 6.7 acre parcel located at south of East Russell Avenue between Brentwood Street and Worth Street. The site is currently developed with a 44,000 square foot building. This is the former Brentwood Elementary School, which closed in early 1980s. The land use plan classifies the site for moderate density residential, which supports a wide variety of single-family townhomes and multifamily uses. That is that orange designation you see at that corner from Green Street that includes a zoning site. So land use policy for this area does support higher intensity uses. The current zoning is conditional use office institutional. That zoning would allow development for residents up to 16 units per acre. That approval was in the late 2000 when there was a proposal to possibly reuse the school for office use and a retirement facility. That proposal never went forward, so that conditional use office institutional has been sitting there since then. The applicant's requesting rezoning to a conditional use residential multifamily 26 district. Including with this application is a conditional zoning ordinance where they have conditions regarding building setback, higher landscaping standards, and vehicle access. Key points from the staff report: this site is within the core city area, which supports higher density development. I would also note the site sits at the outer edge of this neighborhood, fronting along Brentwood Street, which is a multi-lane thoroughfare. There was some concern by staff as to compatibility, especially with the single-family dwellings to the south, even though they have most of this single-family block. To address that, the applicant has offered a condition to require a minimum 40-foot building setback from the southern boundary of the property to assist in ensuring those buildings would not tower over those abutting single-family dwellings. They've also offered standards for higher landscaping along that southern boundary. A key item to note regarding this area, the character of this area has changed over the years with the roadway projects where you now have that interchange to I-74. And you also had Brentwood that was widened in the 2000s from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. Those policies or those improvements supported land use plan changes and policies that support higher density development in this area, specifically when you have a situation where a request entails most of a city block and you're on the outer edge of a neighborhood. Thus, staff is supporting this request as our land use plan does encourage redevelopment in the core city area. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their March public hearing, and they recommended approval by a vote of 7-0, and they afforded a consistency and reasonableness statement for your consideration. The applicant once again has submitted an illustrative plan of their development proposal. This plan does not include the higher setback. So this was just what they included in their neighborhood meetings to give the neighbors a general idea how the site may develop. The applicant is working on updated plans if approved, and you would have a greater setback along the southern boundary of the site to pull the structures away from those abutting single-family homes. That is a brief summary of the staff report. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. I have Yvette and Victor McCullum both wish to speak on this. Please approach the podium and give us your name and your address just for the record.
Victor McCollum, 2006 East Russell Street. First off, I'd like to say that's a good idea you got, because that building has been empty for a mighty long time. And it is good that someone is doing something with that building. It has been at one point in time someone started it and did not do anything with it, but with them doing it, that's good. But my concern is, what are you gonna do with the building? I live there. I know all of y'all watch the news here and there. The 17-year-old child got shot in the head sitting on a porch. I don't want that to happen to me or my kids. The 8-year-old child was in a bed, got shot. I don't want that happening to my kids or to my neighbor's kids. Do you? Do any one of you? That's my concern, the biggest issue. Are you gonna fix this up to where we still gonna be safe in our neighborhood? I'm sure y'all don't live in a rundown neighborhood or a neighborhood that's high rated in crime, do you? If it is, I'd like to know which one of y'all do, because I don't right now. I don't want it to get to that. I know it's business, it's money, I understand that. But I'm still looking after the safety of my kids and grandkids and my wife. Not to just have cause the building is there, his company gonna make money, or whoever's gonna make money. Where's the safety coming in? Are you gonna put a nursing home in there that we can feel more safely with? Can you guarantee that? Can y'all guarantee that? 60 or older? Or you just gonna say, well, okay, we're gonna put some young folks in there with their pants hanging down and some guns. You know the rules right now, and the guns is up, crime rate is up. I don't want this happening to me. And I love sitting on my porch. I don't know about y'all, but I do. But I want to be ducking from bullets. Or my wife ducking from bullets, we running somewhere. It's business, but where's the safety in this business. That's all I have to say on that. Any questions?
Mr. McCullen, have you seen any of the other developments that Winfield Properties has done in our city?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So to your point about what kind of development it will be, I've seen those developments, and we see what our crime reports look like. And what I can say, and I'll allow our police to actually speak for it, but those developments, they're not high in crime. There's one just like it behind the Harris Teeter on Eastchester. There's one just like it behind the YMCA on Hartley. And I think there's another one near our Palladium, right there off of Salmon. Two of them. And the only reason why I bring them up is because your concerns are valid. No one wants their home disrupted. No one wants their neighborhood disrupted. You've owned your home and invested in it. And you have the right to ensure that it can stay safe as well as livable. So you can enjoy your porch.
Yes.
My confidence is that this kind of development won't disrupt that. My confidence, based on previous history of this developer, is that it won't do that. I think there's another point I want to speak to, Mr. McCullen, is that I can't speak to your entire interpretation or meaning behind business decision. All I can speak to is the decision of why I would vote in favor of this and why I think some of my colleagues here on council would vote in favor of this. High Point and the entire Triad region has a major shortage in terms of housing. When we have a shortage in terms of housing, it makes housing costs go up for everyday citizens like you and me. It makes those property values go up, and it makes rent numbers go way up. And as rent goes up, it puts people at a greater risk of being homeless. And so actually, when we do our best to address housing developments, especially ones like this, I don't know if Ms. Wilson, our community development and housing director, is here, but she could speak to the fact that this is a mixed income development, which means that you'll have a lot of market rate rent at this development, as well as some affordable housing rent that will be there as well. But it won't be in the entire unit. However, it will ensure for residents in a place where much needed housing is in this city, it helps us alleviate the issue. We are doing housing development all over this city because right now the demand is so high. And if we don't supply to meet that demand, then very irresponsibly, we would be driving up prices, and we would be saying to every High Pointer, we are not being mindful of your cost of living. And so I break it down like that, not to think that you don't understand that, but to speak at least from my decision on this, because for me, it's not necessarily a business decision, it is a government decision, a governance decision to say, how do we help people? How can we do what our responsibility is to ensure we have housing for High Pointers who want to call High Point home?
Mr. McCullough, I really appreciate you coming tonight to share your concerns, and we all share them as well. We know that High Point, we want to make sure that High Point is livable for everyone. And we know that if a building remains vacant for a long time, it doesn't attract good elements. It attracts the worst elements. And so the concern that you may have about what could possibly be there post-development certainly will not be made worse by having families in mixed income families there. It would be made worse if that building in that area continues to remain undeveloped. So as we've seen over time, if we want to reduce crime, we actually develop areas and we put housing where families can move in. Just like you and your wife want to protect your grandchildren, the more families that move into a neighborhood, the more crime tends to go down. So when you think about that, think about how good families like yourself, you would want them to be your neighbors, to look out for one another. And development helps to do that and improve neighborhoods. So really, I would really like for you and your wife to consider that. And as we consider this decision, much to Councilman Jefferson's point, we do need housing in the city. And we want to make sure that we provide good, stable housing for families such as yours to be able to move in, to improve neighborhoods, not to bring them down.
And I'll echo what both my fellow colleagues have said, is that, we hear all the time, the city needs to do this, the city needs to do that. Well, when it comes to fixing up neighborhoods and things of that nature, sometimes what the city does is attract developers like this to come in and do that very thing you want, which is to make that neighborhood better, to make it look more attractive, to make it more safe. When people see a neighborhood that looks well kept and kept up, they typically feel safer, and it raises the self-image of the whole area. And so we've got some developers like this that target areas that have land or have buildings that need to be torn down because of the state they're in, and they come to us and we say, would you allow us to do that? I get excited to see that, because we've heard complaints about the Brentwood School building and the dangers that buildings in that position pose to kids rummaging through it or whatever. So I think this is a good move for the area. I think we're going to see a lot of families blessed by this, and I hope that it's a positive impact for the entire neighborhood.
This is Councilwoman Johnson, and I don't live too far from the old Brentwood School. So I definitely understand your concerns. However, I was super excited when I heard that that a developer, Winfield, were interested in doing something with it. Because to echo what my fellow council members said, it will make the area safer. Because you do have families there, neighbors watching out to each other's backs and so on. And so definitely having a vacant building there, and I know it's been vacant for such a long time.
It has.
And we take away that element for people, because sometimes when buildings are vacant for a long time, things happen at vacant buildings where people think that they own it, they can go in there, they can do what they want to do in the building. And that's the building itself inside is definitely is very dangerous for anybody. So, and that's one of the reasons why I will support it, because as in developing that area, and I understand your concerns, but developing that area is definitely what that area needs. And again, I'm not too far from there. So.
And to speak to your concern, because I know we want to be careful about, every concern you shared about violence in our city is one that we take very seriously. This councils before us, we've seen it when young people have lost their lives. I knew the young man who lost his life at Living Water. He stayed the night over my house. I mentored him and his cousin. It broke my heart. That's something we take very seriously. And the work that we've been doing to support and work alongside our police department to address issues like that, as well as engage in public education and students through youth programming, those are the kind of things that we're going to keep making investments in. And we hope that you'll continue sharing your concerns, continue speaking with us, and most importantly, continue working with us as we continue to do our best to build a better High Point.
Thank you, Mr. McCollum. I think you're going to see some beautiful buildings going up. Winfield does a beautiful product. I think you'll be very happy with what they put there.
All right.
Is there anyone else here that would like to speak for or against this item? If not, then I will close the public hearing. I'm sorry, yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Again, Davis Ray, 5614 Riverdale Drive, Jamestown. One, we appreciate comments both of concern and some comments of confidence based on what we've done. This would be our 8th community in the city of High Point. We're right down the road, so we're obviously familiar with this. We like to provide directly in our community. I do hear your concerns, and every development we develop is developed to be a win-win relationship. So it's a win-win for the council, it's a win-win for the city, it's a win-win for the neighborhood. We do manage everything that we build and develop, so everything that's been discussed is managed by our team here in Jamestown and High Point. So I would say that with this site being located in the core city, that has been a big desire and a big need and want of different levels at the city. And so when we located this opportunity, we didn't have a choice but to figure out every way in the world to jump all over it and make it happen. So again, we appreciate it, and we're here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for them? If not, I will close the public hearing. And I will make a motion to approve zoning map amendment 23-06 to include the consistency and reasonableness statement.
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Our next public hearing is zoning map amendment 23-07. Herb Shannon, again, I will open the public hearing.
Yes, this is a request by Keystone Group to amend the prior zoning approval for the Northborough Plan Development. This is a subdivision located in the northwestern portion of the city. This property was annexed into the city in 2016, and zoning approval was granted to allow a mixed residential development consisting of townhomes and single-family dwellings. Up to 450 units are permitted. The applicant has submitted this request to amend prior conditions pertaining to environmental impacts. This is the master plan that was approved for this development. There are several tracks with different options, whether it's going to be single-family or townhomes. The eastern part of this site is underdeveloped. I would say half of it's already fully developed. The applicant is now ready to develop the western portion of the site, tracks E1 and E2. With that, they will be doing a public street crossing of that stream. The original zoning condition noted that there be no encroachments into the flood zone area. That's those areas that you see highlighted in gray from that stream that runs through the middle of the site. The applicant's subdivision design for tracks E1 and E2 showed several lots that were encroaching into the floodplain area. The applicant had questioned the limits of that floodplain, so they hired an engineer to do a hydrology study that was submitted to the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. That plan was also submitted to the North Carolina Floodplain Mapping, and their plan documented that with that culvert that's going to be placed over that stream, that portions of that flood zone would actually be reduced. The FEMA has issued a conditional letter for map revision, basically noting that portions of that flood zone area will be reduced. This is the major portion of tracks E1 and E2. That area that you see highlighted in blue, that was the limits of the floodplain area where that left side showed that's how far the floodplain would encroach. As you can see, several lots were impacted. After that study was done, that study documented that instead of that line being to the left, it would be to the right. So you actually have that floodplain area reduced. You would have some minor encroachments to the rear of lots or to the area of grading, but you would not have any lots totally within a flood zone area. Thus, those future property owners would not have to obtain flood insurance. So the applicant, based upon that study, based upon FEMA's approval, based upon the state's environmental department's review, they're requesting amendment of that environmental condition that would allow just minor encroachments into that flood zone area, and that would be just on the edge of lots where they're grading, but you wouldn't have a situation where the portion of the lot where homes are being built would be in a flood zone area. The key thing to note from the staff report is that the uses aren't changing, the number of uses are not changing, and staff support of this is based upon those environmental studies that have been approved by the federal government and the state. Thus, staff is recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request at their March public hearing, and they also recommended approval and included a consistency and reasonableness statement for your consideration. That is a brief summary of this proposal. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Yeah, I do have one person here that wishes to speak on this, and I'll get to any others as well. The first is Jim Hederick. Is that? Oh, I'm so sorry. Judy Stalder here for the applicant. I'm sorry.
Quite all right. My name's Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive in High Point. As Mr. Shannon just explained in great detail, the whole purpose of us being here tonight is to revise the map that shows the flood elevations and clarify the conditions on the zoning. We're not changing anything about the development at all. I'd also like to say that Scott Wallace from Keystone is available for questions, and that's all we've got tonight.
Then now I will call on Jim, is it Hedrick? Hedgecock, Jim Hedgecock, I'm sorry. Hard to read without glasses, my old eyes. If you'll come to the podium, state your name and your address.
I passed this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's information. My name is Jim Hedgecock, and I reside at 8857 Boylston Road. I've lived in this community since 1958. I feel like that we're under siege. And some of that under siege has to do with third grade math. One of the things that I admired about our community and all the people that lived there was their common sense, strictly common sense. And I'm going to show you some things tonight. You asked anybody in that community, could this bucket right here hold all the water in this bucket? They would tell you, some of them would tell you some really lively comments. But you think about this. This is what you tonight are being asked to do. Put this water in this bucket, and I'll show you where it is with common sense. That's all I ask, is common sense. Now, I have a great admiration for Keystone Development Corporation. I've followed them a long time. And they are a good firm that wants to make money. But if you'll take the page of the bridge, this is the Boylston Road Bridge that was put in 2015. Now, that's 2015. They took, and they were basing everything off of the floodplains maps that were done in 2000. And since 2000, we've got tens of millions of square feet of impervious surface above this creek. All you have to do is fly over and you can see Summit, Amazon, trucking terminals everywhere. And all that water drains right down through here. Now, if you look at the existing bridge before 2015, you'll see it's only about 34 feet wide. They didn't change the height on the bridge that I know of. But the new bridge is 92 feet wide. So it goes from 34 to 92. Now, are they so much smarter than everybody else? Why would they build a bridge with a mouth-watering capacity of water-carrying ability 3 times what they had? 3 times. Now, this bridge, if you notice the overtopping flood data that's highlighted in blue, and you will notice that that is the frequency of the overtopping flood is every 100 years. Every 100 years. Since 2015, 2015, I have personally witnessed the bridge within an inch of water of overtopping. And another time it was over the top of the bridge structure, which is about this thick. The entire bottoms there flood for about 700 to 800 feet wide. And if you look at the water that they're saying that goes through this, is 3,700 cubic feet per second of water. Now, we were told always, until last meeting when Herb said, culvert. We were told bridge, bridge, bridge. You stop that water up with that little culvert that they're proposing. Now let me tell you what they're proposing. They're proposing 348 square feet of area. 348. The bridge up there that the engineers designed, they designed it for 1,164 square feet. So they're about 25% of what it needs to be, plus all the water that they're putting on this side of the area. Steve Brackett owns that land on the backside. The water, he said it's never been, since the development started, his land has never been where the water didn't show, except for about a month over the years. And there's a letter that he wrote to the city of High Point confirming this. You remember, what they're asking is to put water out of the black bucket into the yellow, through the red hole. And it ain't gonna happen. Now, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your constituents to do what's right. And this is not right. They should be held accountable for the bridge that they originally proposed. That's all I ever heard until last planning meeting. And they said culvert. And the culvert is not even 25% of what the bridge is designed for. And it's just no rhyme or reason for stopping up this creek. There is so much water coming down through here, it's unimaginable. I mean, it's washed my field out, I never had any problem with that. But all that water up above it's really coming down through here. When it floods, what happens to all your sewer? I can tell you what's going to happen in your sewer. That water's going to get in the sewer, and it's going to come right out in your city water. That entire sewer line is all through there. And it's just going to soak in and push it right out. So I'm asking you to do something responsible. And that is either hold them accountable to the bridge that they originally said they were going to build, or if they're going to put in a culvert, make that culvert at least what the bridge is. You know, the bridge, it can go over the top of the bridge and go on downstream. But with a culvert, it can't. It's got to back up, and it backs up. It backs up to the woods on both sides. And as far as this thing with the floodplain being reduced, folks, I don't know what corn stalks that they were smoking, but they were really smoking some corn stalks. Because nobody in their right mind believes that the floodplain is reduced with all the stuff upstream of the Amazon. These things, it has to be something of integrity. I mean, it's going to be a continuing problem. It's going to have to be fixed. And the people are going to fix it, either you or DOT, when they get through. And you don't want that. Thank you.
Yes, excuse me, what's your address? Where do you live in relation to this?
Sir?
Where do you live in relation to the proposed development?
My land is on both sides of Washington Road at the bridge, on the west side of the bridge. I have 22 and a half acres, came out there in 1977, built a house for my family, raised children, grandchildren there.
Yeah.
And it's all, and this has been family land.
Oh, I'm very familiar with the area. I go to the Kernersville VA hospital for all my medical stuff, so I drive that direction to go there often. So I just wanted to get an idea what you were talking about, how it would affect you.
Well, mine's a pasture that, you see the big bump, with about that big around.
Yeah, okay.
And after everybody would come in and shoot him.
I know exactly where you are then. I got you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here, anyone else who would like to speak on this item? If not, then I will close the public.
Is there anybody can ask a question? Is there anyone from staff that can respond to his concerns? I had a couple of questions. In 2015, who built the bridge?
I would refer that to the applicant as far as the technical questions that's from their environmental study.
I'd just like somebody to speak to a couple of the points that he raised.
Good evening. My name is Scott Wallace. I'm president of Keystone Group. We do business as Keystone Homes, and our business address is 3708 Alliance Drive in Greensboro, 27407. The bridge that you're speaking of is on Boylston Road, which is to upstream of our property. As far as I know, it was an NCDOT bridge, but I'm not sure of that because I think Boylston Road is an NCDOT.
It's an NCDOT,
Yeah, so I'm not clear on how that's important to our crossing that we're doing. We're doing a crossing there as we originally planned, and we've never identified what type of crossing that would be because until we hire the professionals to understand what the crossing has to be, we don't know what it's going to be. So we engaged a water resource company and for nearly a 2-year process to go through an exhaustive process to study this area and vet this area and model it many different methods and ways. And within that process, that's with FEMA, NC, the North Carolina Department of Water Quality, City of High Point, and other agency are involved in this review process and to vet this modeling process to ascertain if it's going to be beneficial and that it won't cause a negative impact upstream or downstream. So the solution that the modeler, that agency, that company come up with, along with all the various government entities as well as other professional engineers, was a series of culverts, a collection of culverts, just not just one little culvert. There's a multiple culverts, and it's not an inexpensive venture. However, we feel really strongly about the housing in this area, and it's been very successful for us in the city of High Points and our many homeowners that are there. So like I said, we've been working on this for several years, and unforeseen to us is we weren't aware or it didn't jump out of us. There was this really small technical condition that was in a zoning condition 5+ years ago. So we went through all this process, went through the TRC process and several submittals to the TRC to get TRC approval so we can get construction drawings approved and continue this development. And it was just in those latter TRC meetings that this condition was discovered that it was in there. So just to echo what Herb said and Judy said earlier, all this is just changing this one condition. And as the modeling has proven, the floodway is actually going to be reduced. So there's no additional homes, no additional density. It's just trying to satisfy this one zoning condition that was an unintended consequence from our original rezonings.
So the bridge, the access point that you're looking to make is totally separate from the bridge that he's referring to?
Absolutely. The
and
bridge.
How far apart are they?
Several 2,000 feet plus or minus. That's just a ad hoc guess real fast.
No, that's good.
Yeah. So I feel very confident. I mean, this went through all the vetting through all the different agencies and governments and private individuals. So I 100% believe in it.
Ms. Wallace, you said that it wasn't a single culvert, it was multiple
Yes.
culverts.
Yes.
So to Mr. Hedgecock's concerns about the flow capacity, do you think the multiple culverts would improve flow capacity, or is that not something that's even germane to your interests?
I think it would. I don't think it's detrimental to the consistent capacity, and as the results proved, it's going to reduce the area. I can't speak to those technical calculations because I'm not qualified to. So it's going to. I would guess, as Tom said earlier, it's kind of dangerous when you guess, but I would guess it's going to be a non-issue and it's not going to be any detrimental. And as the resort said, it's going to be an improvement.
So one more question. Was there discussion of a bridge before the culvert was introduced, or was it always culverts?
It wasn't really, in my view, and I was involved in it. We just says crossing because we've learned. I mean,
so it wasn't a commitment to
for a bridge.
culvert
No,
or
absolutely
a
not.
bridge one way or the
No,
other
sir.
in the beginning.
No, sir. No, sir. Because no, sir.
Mr. Hedgecock, I'm sorry. Is that the way you remember it? Because I know you said earlier that you said that you distinctly heard a bridge, and then it was the last meeting that you heard culvert. Just want to make sure that we're.
It's always been a bridge until last night. Before they bought this property, they negotiated the people down on the price because they said they had to build a bridge across the creek in order to service this other side. That's the people that sold the land to Keystone. They said they had to build a bridge.
I disagree with that. I 100% disagree with that. So
That's what they told me. And I don't know that they would have, but that's what they told me, Scott. And I have great respect for Scott.
Okay.
But that's what the people told me.
Well, I mean, I do feel like that's material, in the sense of what was discussed prior to that, because if the agreement was around a bridge and, it changed, later to a culvert, I mean, those things could happen, but if you're saying that there was no commitment to either one, it was just identified as a crossing, that could have ultimately manifested in either a bridge or a culvert, but it ended up being a culvert.
Yes, it's very large. I mean,
Right.
it's 12, 10 feet tall times several of them. And, I mean, there's bottomless culverts,
Certainly.
there's various ways you
Certainly.
can cross, and until you get in the engineering stage, we have no way of knowing that.
Okay.
Mr. Holmes, just to note on that, the zoning conditions does not specify the type of crossing.
Right.
It just notes that they were across the stream.
Right.
But at that time, it was unknown until you do all the engineering studies, but the condition just said you're going to cross the stream.
Certainly.
That didn't note the type of crossing.
Okay. Thank you, Herb.
Are there any further questions? Anyone else here wish to speak for or against this? If not, I will close the public hearing, and I will make a motion to approve zoning map amendment 23-07 to include the consistency and reasonableness statements.
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion?
I would just make a point to Mr. Hedgecock. Seeing as that the zoning amendment did not specify, and without any record of prior discussion with the landowners for sale, it's very difficult for us to ascertain what was agreed prior to today. And everything that we have to do to make our decision is what we hear today. So, I mean, I'm sure that doesn't make you feel any better, but that's the information that we have.
Any further discussion? If not, there's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Our next item is zoning map amendment 23-09. And again, I will open the public hearing and recognize Herb Shannon again.
Yes, your final zoning-related issue is zoning map amendment case 2309. This is a request to rezone the former Presbyterian home facility. If you're familiar with that portion of the city at the intersection of Lexington Avenue and Greensboro Road. I would note that name has changed, is now going to be Jamestown Parkway from Deep River Road eastward, but the applicant's requesting rezoning to facilitate revitalization of that facility. The Presbyterian home left this facility in 2005 to go to their current campus off of Sandy Ridge Road. The facility was totally vacant at 2011. The applicant's requesting rezoning to facilitate redevelopment of this site, and they've divided it into two tracks, Track A and Track B. The northern two-thirds of the site, Track A, has already been repurposed for townhome development. The applicant's requesting rezoning from institutional to conditional zoning residential multifamily 16 to match the manner in which that area is developed for multifamily use. The southern portion of the site, as Area B, is developed with a 160,000 square foot multi-story building that ranges between 3 and 5 stories. The applicant is requesting rezoning from institutional to a conditional zoning general business for that southern portion of the site, where they're looking to renovate that existing structure. At build-out, they're looking to have up to 128 multifamily units. As they get to that, part of the building will be reused for an internal self-storage facility. And the goal is along the first floor to allow retail uses that not only could serve the surrounding neighborhood, but primarily to those residents that will be living in the facility. So they've requested this rezoning to spur renovation of this facility. The land use plan designates this area for mixed use. That was part of the 2011 update to the land use plan and part of the core city plan, where the Presbyterian home site, the adjacent 5 Points area, was all reclassified for mixed use to spur some innovation of multiple development options for this area, and the applicant is proposing to take advantage of that land use designation to do a mixed-use development. Of concern is compatibility with the surrounding area, but with the northern portion of the site adjacent to multifamily use, it would be compatible. The southern portion of the site abuts that 5 Points area, you have that commercial use, so you would have a similar land use pattern. And the fact that this site is basically surrounded by roads, you have Deep River Road, Jamestown Parkway, and Interstate, this is somewhat of an island, but that separation would also help ensure compatibility to the surrounding uses. Finally, I would note this area has changed over the past 20 years with the introduction of the I-74 corridor, that interchange at this location, and with the recently completed Jamestown Parkway that will take you straight to Guilford College Road, this area is seeing a higher volume of traffic, and this is an appropriate location for mixed-use development to take advantage of those higher traffic volumes. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of this request. I would note the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal at their March public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 7-0, and it has forwarded to City Council a consistency and reasonableness statement for your consideration. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Shannon.
Mr. Shannon, you mentioned the units. Forgive me if I missed it, but was there any mention in terms of what kind of housing? Is it mixed income, all market rate, senior?
The main thing staff looked at, is this an appropriate location for multifamily mixed use? Yes, no. We cannot, far as staff and zoning commission, dictate age and so forth. That's kind of up to the applicant. So we primarily focused on, is this an appropriate location for more multifamily reuse of that facility with some retail components? And based upon the land use policies that you've adopted for this area, staff is making a recommendation of approval for that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I totally got that part. I think what I'm curious about is in their conversations with you all, did they mention any of that?
With the applicant?
Yeah.
I would let them address their long-term plans as far as how they wish to market the site.
And we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
Mr. Terrell again.
And we will answer that question. I'm Tom Terrell, Fox Rothschild, 529 West Parkway Avenue here in High Point, representing Solution Architects. Solution Architects actually is John and Bonnie Hannon. Typically, we stand here and we hear a company name, but this is the couple that is behind Solution Architects. They're local. They were married here at High Point University campus. They live in Summerfield, and they've owned the entire 18 acres for about 2 years. Now, to answer Councilmember Jefferson's question, the portion to the rear, what used to be the cottages of the old Presbyterian home, are age-restricted and they are affordable housing. There is a plan for what we call the hospital that is for age-restricted, and it will be market rate. But to give you a little bit more of the flavor of that, Herb is exactly right. This, what we call the hospital building, has been vacant since 2011. Vacancy has caused vagrancy. Vacancy has caused trespassing. Vacancy has caused vandalism, and it has not been good for 5 Points. It's not been good for High Point. When the Hannons purchased this property 2 years ago, they immediately, even before they have zoning and entitlement to do what they ultimately want to do, they spent approximately $50,000 just getting all of the kudzu and the weeds off of the interstate, so it has a better presentation. They have already replaced over 25 windows in a building like that. That's not inexpensive. They have moved 440 cubic yards of trash, which is not insignificant. They've done extensive roof repairs to stop water damage on the inside. They've added security, several other elements. And by the time we got to our neighborhood meeting, 4 people showed up, and every single one of them came in to say the word thank you. we've noticed what you've been doing. We appreciate what you're doing, and they wished him luck. In fact, one of them volunteered to speak, and he came to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And what we're seeing is they really are stabilizing and they're enhancing 5 Points. Councilmember Jefferson, I thought, was very eloquent when you're speaking about the Brentwood Avenue. I mean, several of you spoke about housing and the need, but you addressed the problem perfectly. Housing is an issue. It is not something that we like to talk about, and we want it to be an issue. It really is an issue. And there's a supply and demand dynamic going on. You don't fix it by a large project, but you can address it with several smaller projects, dozens of smaller projects, and you can make that dent. That's my bridge to saying if you approve this, there's going to be a lot more housing available through a conversion of the hospital building to multifamily. The zoning is done so that there can be a self-storage component. Frankly, that's because you can do that fast and you can get some cash flow to pay for this other stuff. But there will also be ideally limited commercial on the first floor that would add to what 5 Points can offer. So that's where it is. We're glad to answer any questions.
All I'll say is that, you know, I appreciate you all sharing this and all the work that's been done already there on that site. I can tell you, you know, this is nestled right in Ward 1. And ever since coming on council, when I ran for council, one of the big points brought up from folks, a question often asked is, what's going to happen to Presbyterian Homes? What's going to happen to that site? Everyone sees the potential of it, and it's been there for so many years. And it's nestled right at a very important spot as you come off of the 74 there, 311, and now with the Jamestown Parkway, it gets even more traffic. And so being able to see that have some investment, and also I think knowing that it's still going to be reserved in terms of age restrictions is important too. I think what we hear over and over again is that, well, not only do we need more housing with sort of a variety of income capabilities, but as well as those that can be reserved in terms of age restrictions. I don't know if a term ever is senior housing or anything like that. I may be saying it wrong, forgive me. But we hear it often, and we know that it's a major need. It's not just young folks who need more housing, it's folks of all ages who need housing right now. So being able to make this kind of investment, I think, is really, really key, and appreciate the work you all are doing.
Thank you.
I'll say, you can see my cars right there in that top right hand of that picture. And so I can tell you firsthand, I think this is going to help a lot for that area. I think this has the potential with the opportunity zone and all the other things right there to be one of the next major areas of development for High Point. As you put in the rooftops, you're going to need amenities, you're going to need grocery stores. So I've been excited that Cyril has, because I've worked there every day. I hear people talking and know that I'm on council. They ask me about the same thing, and I'm like, I don't know, we've got to find the right person to come along and solve that problem for us. So appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments from the dais? Is anyone here to speak for or against this item? If not, then I will close the public hearing. And I will make a motion to approve zoning map amendment 23-09 to include the consistency and reasonableness statement.
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this? If not, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We have some minutes to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any additions, corrections? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. And I will open the floor for some comments, because I'm sure they're coming, because market's this week, so. Anybody got anything to say before we adjourn?
I just want to say something really quick. I want to echo everything we've been saying tonight about housing. I was just tallying up here, and I don't even know if I got the full number right, I was tallying up the Old Winston development, the Brentwood development, and this one we just saw at Presbyterian Homes, and you do the math on that, and you're looking at 320 more units coming into the city, which is so critical and so important. Some of those investing in the mixed income, age, focus, things of that nature. And it's the kind of thing we need. We need more and more of it. So appreciate staff, everything you all are doing to work alongside developers who want to bring that in. And hopefully we'll continue making that investment so we can help more High Pointers.
I would just echo that as well. As our population grows, it ultimately becomes more diverse in age, in other aspects of society. And so having housing that can meet that makes us more attractive for people to want to grow and invest here in High Point. So kudos to those who are in staff that are encouraging that and those who are making investments here in High Point. We greatly appreciate it.
And didn't we just do a ribbon cutting on or a groundbreaking? Some of y'all were at the groundbreaking last week.
Legacy Ridge with
For Legacy Ridge.
If I can take a personal minute to thank everybody in this room, the recent passing of my mom. You guys showed up, and it meant a lot. So the cards and food and your presence and your prayers, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything further? I will echo that it's exciting to work for 4 hours in meetings, making things happen around here. It's exciting stuff coming down. It really is. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.